just to get us started with an easy one here, just kind of tell us about your podcast, Locked On Cougars, and your affiliation with BYU and your BYU fandom.
So Locked On Cougars, it's a daily podcast covering all things BYU. I work for a network called the Locked On Podcast Network doing it. I've been doing it for the better part of 4 years now, and It's a lot of fun. It keeps me really busy.
Right.
It's a daily podcast.
Yeah,
but
daily, yeah.
It's really fun because it coincides with my day job. I'm lucky enough that I actually work in sports radio covering BYU, the Utah Jazz, the University of Utah out here in Salt Lake City. So it just kind of coincides with my day job, which is lucky enough. But the daily podcast, I grew up literally in the shadows of Lavelle Edwards Stadium, which is the home turf for BYU football. I grew up going to games as a youngster with my grandpa and my dad. So I've been around the university my entire life. I actually attended there for my college days, and lucky enough still live in the community where I grew up, went to school, and now I get to cover them professionally.
Well, that's awesome, man. So let's kind of run through a little history with BYU. Between all sports, Texas Tech is 18-11 all-time against BYU, but we've only played one time in football, and that was back in 1940. We've played 4 times in basketball. BYU holds the advantage over us with a 3-1 record. The last meeting there was in 1995. And baseball, we've met quite a few times, 8 for this matchup is quite a few. Our last meeting in 2014. So that's one of the things we're really excited about. This is a school we don't have a whole lot of history with. So Dustin, I'll kick it over to you so we can start to learn everything we need to know about BYU.
I guess, go ahead, Dustin. Did you have a question?
Yeah. No, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, with regards to Texas Tech, I actually think BYU fans are very intrigued by the Red Raiders.
Yeah.
I think, because you said there's just not a huge history between these two universities. There is history between the Cougars and Houston. There's some UCF ties. Like, the funny thing is that Texas Tech is one of those universities you're like, okay, well, when has BYU interacted with them? Not very often.
Much,
so, okay, so what questions? I guess I'll kick it back to you guys. What do you just want a kind of a general overview of BYU? What do you want?
Yeah, let's go just a general overview of BYU.
Okay.
You tell us campus, stadium upgrades, little sports, and then we'll dive into football and basketball specifically, the conference move, all that good stuff. So, yeah, just kind of start us off in general.
Okay. Well, so BYU is a university sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Most people know it as the Mormon Church or the LDS Church. So it has more than 32,000 students at any given time in the university. It's actually one of the largest private universities in the entire country. It's based in Provo, Utah, at the foot of the Wasatch Mountains. We actually sit at almost 4,500 feet elevation up here in Utah. So a lot of teams, when they come in, they're like, wow, it's
that elevation.
The air's a little bit thin up here, so that's one thing that most fans comment on. Lavelle Edwards Stadium holds 63,000 plus fans when it's filled to capacity. It's got some of the more stunning views in terms of backdrops for college football. For anybody who's ever seen pictures of it, it's absolutely incredible. And the thing about BYU as a university is I don't know how to describe it. It's its own unique place. A lot of people like to call Provo unique, and for lack of, and it really is. It's just kind of it's a unique place. The vast majority, 99% of the student population are members of the predominant faith, the LDS faith around here. So it's a unique thing, but the one thing you need to know about BYU fans is they are crazy passionate about their Cougars, and they have a following literally worldwide.
We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so that just leads into our next question is just familiarize us with BYU fans. Like you said, seems like you got a pretty passionate fan base. What are they like on Twitter? What are they like, other forms of social media? What are they like at games? Just kind of familiarize us with that so when we're going out to Provo for a future football game, we're kind of ready for it.
They're rabid. That's the thing about it. They're all over Twitter. If you're on Twitter, you can just search BYU and you'll see just the number of BYU fans that are out there. The crazy thing about BYU is just due to its affiliation with the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, they have people who are at least familiar with the university and its sports teams literally worldwide. For an example, I have a guy who listens to my podcast pretty often, if not daily. He actually lives on a sailboat in the Philippines. He is a member of the faith. He made his money and decided, you know what, I want to live on a sailboat, and he cruises around the Philippines. He pings, he gets off like cell towers. He'll download the show, watch/listen to it, and he interacts with me all the time. It kind of just shows you that there are BYU fans literally everywhere, and they are very active on social media, for better or worse in many ways. Like if you rile them up, they can come after you, but at the same time, if they see something they like, they are more than happy to rally to the cause.
That's awesome. It feels like they're going to fit right in with all the other Big 12 fan bases.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And let me add one thing on that. BYU went independent just over a decade ago in 2011.
Right.
That coincided with the University of Utah, their arch rivals, going to the Pac-12. And BYU, the reason they went independent is they had dreams of doing what they're doing now, is going into the Big 12. They want to be part of the quote-unquote Big Time. They want to be Power 5. BYU fans, that's the thing they have craved the most over the past decade of independence. They didn't mind independence, but they wanted it to end up where it's ended up. And that's the thing about this, is BYU fans are super excited to be members of the Big 12.
All right.
That leads right into where we were going with Big 12 conference coming in there. And I was doing like research on football team and all that, and I was like, yeah, when the last big realignment happened, Utah went west, and then you guys were like, we're just going to – the Mountain West kind of fluttered around. And you guys said, hands up, we're going to go by ourselves for the next however long. Before we get into Big 12, tell me about that whole move. You said is kind of an iffy move, and how's it worked out now that we're done with it?
Well, I think a lot of people had questions about the viability of BYU going independent because it hadn't been done in quite some time. Notre Dame is really the only program out there that's been independent for their entirety. Yeah. They joined the ACC for the 1 year during the pandemic. But the thing is, it's an interesting thing. BYU got a deal with ESPN, and if they had they not gotten that deal to broadcast their games on ESPN's family of networks, it probably doesn't work out the way it worked out. But all things considered, independence was a success because the overarching goal of them going independent was to prove themselves worthy of getting into the Power 5. Yeah, it took 11 seasons to get there.
Gotcha.
But they finally made it, and that's the biggest thing is BYU, their bet on themselves paid off.
That's awesome. So where do you stand on the recent conference realignment and now the new shakeup of conference realignment? We thought we were just doing this Big 12 edition. No. Now the Pac-12 is crumbling. So I don't know where you even want to start. Just go in on it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the UCLA and USC thing was pretty monumental. And obviously the Texas Oklahoma deal last year was big news as well. And there are clearly two lead conferences. The SEC and the Big Ten now are going to be the big dogs. The biggest thing I see, and I guess we can start here, is I think that the Big 12 needs to be aggressive here. If there are any inklings for any of these other Pac-12 schools, or I guess what we call the Pac-10 now, the remaining 10 schools in that conference, they have any inkling of leaving, a guy like Brett Yormark, the new commissioner for the Big 12, should be all over that and saying, hey, come join us. We're going to open our negotiations here very relatively quickly with our media rights partners. So that's the thing about this, is you cannot afford to be passive. The Big 12's in a good spot right now with the 12 members as currently constituted. I guess the 14 until OU and UT decide to bounce. But the thing is, you can strengthen yourself, and I think make yourself clearly the number 3 conference if you are smart about this.
Yeah, I totally agree there. So interested from your perspective, because y'all aren't in the conference yet. Last year the Big 12 goes through this. Like you said, we lose Texas and Oklahoma. We're thinking maybe this is the end of the Big 12. We add 4 new schools, including you guys, that, I think makes our conference pretty strong. You're adding 4 really good schools who are competitive cross sports. It just adds to the depth of the conference. Where are your views at as you're sitting here, not yet in the Big 12 conference? Do you think, is there any possible regret, like, maybe we could have waited? Do you think y'all made the right decision coming into the Big 12 when y'all did? Just kind of what's running through y'all's minds up there in BYU right now as y'all have all this going on and you've already kind of locked in.
Okay, let me be frank about this. The Pac-12 was the goal for many BYU fans for decades.
Okay,
that
was
was
my question. Yeah.
That was the dream for BYU fans. The situation was, though, that the Pac-12, in their snobbery, is what I like to term it, was not about to let a religious university and B, a non-research institution, or at least not the AAU, the Association of American Universities. BYU doesn't have that designation. They're more focused on their undergraduate education versus research. So those two things, the Pac-12 just kind of looked down their nose on BYU and essentially said, yeah, you can dream all you want, but you ain't doing this. So I think when the Big 12 came calling, BYU's like, you know what? Yeah, the Pac-12 would have been nice because our recruiting base is more Western-based, California outside of Utah. It seems to be BYU's heaviest population center where they recruit from. But they just wanted to be part of a conference that values them and understands what they can bring, and that's what the Big 12 saw. I actually think that we've had enough people on my radio station, on my radio show in particular recently, with the whole news about the Pac-12 saying that how bad does the Pac-12 feel all of a sudden about this snobbery towards BYU? So I guess I'll sum it up with this. The Pac-12's loss, in a way, is the Big 12's gain.
Yep.
Yeah. So is there any specific schools you're hoping we add? Because we totally agree. We should be aggressive.
Get them all.
We should add 4 to 6 schools. And are you hoping Utah gets left out of that more specifically?
Personally, I want Utah in. I do want Utah to be part of it. The one thing you need to know about the Utah-BYU rivalry is it is one of the biggest rivalries that people don't really pay attention to nationally. It's Auburn, Alabama type stuff. It's Florida, Georgia type stuff. These fan bases, the schools, for reference point, they're 40 miles apart. You can drive to one of the schools in 40 minutes. Like they're right there next to each other. They sit in 2 separate valleys here in the mountains, and they're just next door neighbors, literally, with the fan bases. So I would love Utah to be part of it. I think the 4 schools you need to target most: Colorado, Utah, and the Arizonas. Yep. You need those 4. And if Washington and Oregon want to hop in, great.
Yeah.
Go for it. They're big brands. You branch out into the Pacific Northwest. It makes you a nice western branch of the conference outside of BYU. But I think the 4 you need to target most of all are Utah, Colorado, and in my heart of hearts, the 2 that I thought probably need to be on the top of the priority list are the Arizonas. I think the Arizonas probably should be the top 2.
Yeah, and from all things I've heard, it seems like they really want to come and be a part of the Big 12. It feels like they fit in pretty quickly with what the Big 12 is and where it's going. And really for them, I don't really see what sticking around in the Pac-12 does to benefit them. Jumping into the Big 12 solidifies them in what would be the 3rd best conference now. And then it pulls away from the Pac-12 and makes those other schools really, really have to figure out what they're going to do with their future. So, Dustin, you got anything you kind of want to add on the realignment front here?
No, Jake, you're right on point with how we feel. We did a big kind of realignment discussion last week.
Everyone.
That's exactly how we feel. Arizona, come on in. I want the Utah-BYU rivalry because – and now the conversation is like, well, who's going to be rivals with all these new schools? And it's like, well, we can just bring one in if we want.
Yeah, and the fun part is, like, I know Colorado's down. I think we all see Colorado, but Colorado's they were in the Big 12, so
they can come back.
It's going back home for them. So it makes a lot of sense. It opens up that TV window even wider on the West Coast for you in terms of those late night windows. BYU was going to be that for the Big 12. You can add 2, 3, 4, maybe even 6 schools that can help open that up and make a nice Western division over there for you. Go for it.
I do have one thing I want to add on, and it's something that a lot of Big 12 fans and Tech fans are all realizing is the snobbery that you were talking about with the Pac-12 schools and like Colorado and Utah feeling like they're too good for us. Like as a BYU fan that hates Utah, anything that you can just add on to that, because it's been kind of wild seeing their fan base just pretend like they're way too good for the Big 12 when just 10 years ago Utah was only in the Mountain West Conference, you know?
It's the fan base. They just they feel like they have been up long enough that they've kind of gotten high on the horse, I guess to say. The biggest thing is, let me also be clear about one thing. My best friend growing up, I grew up a BYU guy. My best friend growing up was a Utah guy. We had some absolutely just epic clashes going back and forth growing up. So it exists every day. I don't necessarily hate Utah because they're very valuable in my day-to-day work now, covering them professionally. But Utah, Colorado, they do in some ways put off this vibe like, well, you want us in the Big 12. What are you talking about? We'd be downgrading coming from the – shut up. Just stop. The biggest thing is, if it comes to it, you can guarantee that their chancellors, ADs, university presidents, administration, whatever, they will all be singing the praises of the Big 12 if it comes to it. That's the honest truth.
Agreed.
Yeah, so moving into more specific sports coming into the Big 12, what sports do you expect BYU to immediately be good, ready to go, and even compete for championships? And what do you think some sports are that might be lacking and struggle the first handful of years?
So the ones I think that will – so we'll start with the ones I think will compete right away. Yeah. Football. I think football absolutely will. They've won 21 games the past 2 years. There's a decent shot they could go 10-plus wins again this year if they stay healthy. So they could have 30-plus wins as they move into the Big 12. I think they will compete right away. Women's soccer, they made it to the national championship match last year. They will compete right away. They've done it for decades at this point in Provo. Women's volleyball will compete right away as well. They've been very good. They've been to the Elite Eight as well as the Final Four of the women's volleyball tournament in the last 5 or 6 years. So they annually are a very good team. I think the women's basketball program should be decent. They just changed coaches. Their longtime head coach retired, and they replaced him with a former player. We'll see how they do. Now, on the flip side, also, I think the men's and women's golf programs can be pretty competitive. I know that they are a cold weather school up here in Utah, but BYU does have national championships they have won in golf in their history, and they've actually got some guys that can compete. They've got a really good team coming back this year. I think that will lead them to some success. Yeah. Now, on the flip side, programs I think that are going to struggle out of the gate. First one, men's basketball. They are going into what I believe will be the best college basketball conference, bar none. I know the Big East can say what they want to say, but when you got guys like you in Tech, you've got Kansas, you've got Houston, you've got Baylor, just the litany, Oklahoma State, you can go down the list, and they are all competitive. Mark Pope is a gregarious personality. Anybody who talks to him absolutely loves the dude, and he understands the challenge he's got as he goes up against the Big 12 here. But honestly, if BYU finishes in the top half of the Big 12 in their first couple of seasons, count me as a guy who's absolutely stunned. I think that's going to be one that they're going to be hard-pressed to be as competitive as they may think they are going in. One other one I think that's going to take some time, two of them that I think are going to take some time to get up to speed are both softball and baseball. Now, let me add this caveat. I am married to a former BYU softball player. She is not going to be happy that I said that. But I think in her heart of hearts, she understands it. With a cold weather school, it's harder to recruit athletes to play softball and baseball because in places like Lubbock, you can play baseball and softball year-round. Yeah. Utah, you can't do that for 6 months of the year, it feels like.
Got to cancel games and stuff, right?
Yeah. So, it's funny you say that. A few years ago, we played Maine in one of our first games, and their whole first month is on the road because of that exact reason.
True story.
They play Alabama-type schools and Southern,
True story. My wife, BYU softball, spends about the first month and a half to 2 months of their season playing tournaments in the Sun Belt. They go down to Mexico, they go to Arizona, they go to California. When her and I were dating, it was actually her senior year. She was playing at BYU before we got married. I didn't see her for a good, I'd say, month stretch because she was just traveling so heavily. So I'd say baseball, softball, and men's basketball are probably the three that I think they could be competitive down the road, but they're going to face some issues going immediately into the Big 12.
Nice. Well, that sounds terrible for our women's programs from what you listed off because we're either mediocre or not. So adding another one at the top is not great for us on the female side of the sport. But to follow up with BYU football, because we definitely agree, BYU football can come in and they're going to be able to hang. I mean, I just said before you got on, I was like, Brooks, I was doing research and looking through. They're way better football program historically than we are. they have a lot of 10-win seasons, and then they go regularly 8 and 9 wins.
Right.
Like, and yeah, like you just said, the last 2 years, 11-1, 10-3. Go dive in more about BYU football coming to the Big 12 next year.
So the BYU history goes back 50 years. 1972, literally 50 years back, is the era that BYU fans really want to talk about. Before that, they were a nondescript program. They didn't do much. As you mentioned, 1940, they played Texas Tech and lost. They were not a winning program for the first 50 or so years of their existence. The funny thing is they actually they played their first season of football officially in 1922. So this year, it's 100 years, but they didn't play during World War II, et cetera. So it's not 100 seasons quite yet. But the biggest thing is since Lavelle Edwards was hired in 1972 as the head coach of the BYU football program, since then they have had multiple high-level quarterbacks, NFL MVP, Super Bowl winners. They have a Heisman Trophy in Ty Detmer. They got the national championship in 1984. Steve Sarkisian, who is the Texas head coach, actually led BYU to a 14-1 record as a senior in 1996 as their quarterback.
Oh.
I don't know how many people know that down there, but he's a former BYU quarterback. So they've got a really rich history, and it even comes up to the modern day. As I mentioned, they're 21-4 over the past 2 years. They got a pretty stout schedule this year. If they win 10 games this year, it'll be another successful year. But you can't argue with 31 wins in 3 seasons as you get ready to go into the Big 12. They got a really, really rich tradition, and BYU fans, they are a football school. That is the thing that makes things go around here. I know it's similar to Tech. By the way, big ups to Texas Tech. The announcement, that $200 million investment they're making, that is absolutely incredible. The renderings they put out. I'm just going to say this, as a Red Raider fan, a Tech fan, you should be excited. That looks absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, last night was pretty cool when that announcement was made, and just seeing those renderings, and where our seats are at the games are going to be like right next to that. So we're going to get a front row view to just kind of seeing what that all looks like and that, transformation. But yeah, having people who want to put a lot of money into your university and to help your athletics program is pretty cool. I want to stay here on football. Y'all's coach, he hasn't coached at the Power 5 level, correct?
So Kalani has never been a head coach at the Power 5 level. He actually was the defensive coordinator / linebackers coach at the University of Utah when they went through their Power 5 transition. So he's been on a staff that has gone through what they're going to go through in the next couple of years for BYU. So that will help in that regard. But Kalani, yes, this is his first head coaching position. He's a BYU guy. He played for Lavelle Edwards in the late 90s / early 2000s. He was a kid who grew up dreaming of playing for BYU. He was a huge fan, and he will tell you straight to your face, I am living my dream, coaching the school I always dreamed of coaching.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So do you think this would be any struggle for him, kind of going up a level, and what it takes? I know y'all are independent, so y'all got a pretty stacked schedule from the get-go, but that week-to-week conference battles once again where the Big 12 adding those 4 schools, it just means that there's like 11 pretty dang good football schools, and then there's Kansas.
Sure, yeah, and I'm actually not convinced that Lance Leipold's not going to pull off a miracle.
He's actually the first good football coach that they've hired in a while.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. But on that front, I think that BYU is trying to do their best to be ready for the transition in football. They've hired actually a number of staffers this year. I think they added, 6 or 7 in the last month that they just added to their football staff. They gave Kalani Sitake what they termed an unprecedented contract, gave all of his assistant coaches, who, by the way, his assistant pool right now has not changed in 3 years.
That's
He's got
incredible.
the same assistants underneath him. They're one of, I think, 6 programs that has not had a change in the last 2 years across the entire spectrum of Division I football. So he's got some great continuity. The week-to-week grind of the Power 5 is absolutely going to take a toll on BYU. They understand that. And they're trying to get themselves ready for it. They're going to face, I think, 4 or 5 preseason top 25 teams on this year's schedule. Sure, that's a good schedule, but it's not the week in and week out grind that the Big 12 will be for them. So you can prepare as much as you want to, but until you experience it every single week, you truly, I don't think, can be ready for it.
So basketball, you said, gonna struggle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you so nervous about the Big 12 basketball conference?
The biggest thing for me is just the overall depth and talent base that the Big 12 boasts. We're talking about Baylor, who's had a national championship. Tech has been to the Final Four. I don't know how many times in the last little bit. That's the thing. BYU, oh, by the way, this is a fun fact about BYU basketball. They're the program, they've been to the most NCAA tournaments in NCAA tournament history without actually making the Final Four. It's something like 30 or 31 trips in their program history without actually making it to the Final Four. The furthest they've made is the Elite Eight. So they've got a good tradition in basketball. They've been a pretty good program in the West Coast Conference, playing second fiddle to Gonzaga most of that time. Right. Actually, the entire time they've been in the conference. Yeah. The biggest thing is, though, similar to football, the West Coast Conference outside of Gonzaga and St. Mary's, it's not fantastic. The thing about this, you mentioned the fact that Big 12 football, Kansas, they're a doormat right now. The Big 12 basketball, though, like, good luck. It's just the grind that you have to go through to win this conference and be competitive. I just don't know that BYU's quite up to snuff quite yet. But I also believe that if Mark Pope is given the requisite time, I think he can get them ready.
Yeah, you said earlier a couple questions ago, like, if we can finish top half of this conference, I'm like, yeah, that's what we all hope for, honestly.
Yeah, and that's
if you finish top half, you're in the tournament, and they think you're going to be you're probably a 4 or 5 seed. Like, honestly, like, top half of this conference is really good.
Well, that's the thing about it. You can make the NCAA tournament with a losing conference record.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's the wild thing about this. BYU has had to, in the West Coast Conference, they've had to have like a 27-4 record, and they can't have more than like 2 losses to Gonzaga in West Coast Conference play if they want to make the tournament. Yeah. It changes now as you go into this Big 12. So the top half of the conference should be the goal initially for BYU. I think winning it's a ways off. But just go in there and be competitive. Don't be the Kansas of Big 12 basketball.
Right.
Granted, I think that's going to be UCF, but that's just me.
Hey, they thought that too when we had them on. They were just like, we're going to get destroyed when we start playing basketball against you guys. And I think that's what's going to take all the new fan bases kind of, catch all off guard is that Saturday game against Kansas. And then you turn around and then you're at Baylor. And then you got a home game versus Texas Tech. And then you're back on the road at Iowa State. And there's just no nights off in the Big 12. You play one bad game and you're looking at a 20-point blowout loss. And so it's definitely something that you sweat a lot and you lose a lot of hair. I lose a lot of hair during the basketball seasons. So to kind of move it on to more Big 12-centric questions here, from your perspective, new Big 12 teams, you've got 8 of us. You got, of course, the other 3 schools joining you. What are some of the Big 12 teams that you're most excited to play? Football, basketball, it can be, whatever sport. And then some of the teams that you're, kind of could care less about, really.
Okay. I'm going to say Texas and Oklahoma just simply due to the fact that BYU has had some decent matchups. And actually, BYU has a winning record against both of them in their history.
There you go.
That's football, funny enough. They're 3-1 versus the Longhorns. Taysom Hill absolutely torched them the last 2 times.
Yes, that's why Taysom Hill will always be a legend, I think, to a lot of Big 12 fan bases is because those are supposed to be like good Texas years, and then Taysom Hill went in there and just destroyed them.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. And Oklahoma, they beat them in 2008, knocked Sam Bradford out of that game, as many people might recall. But so they've got that history, and I think that they just want a crack or 2 at both of those programs. The ones that I look forward to, I'm excited to see what I'm calling the original 8. I know that's probably a weird term, but the 8 schools that are remaining. I just want to experience. I want to go to Lubbock. I want to go to Manhattan, Kansas. I want to go to Lawrence. I want to go to Stillwater, Morgantown, Ames. I just want to experience what the Big 12. I've seen plenty of Big 12 football. I'm a college football fan at heart. That's my favorite sport in the entire world. I watch a lot of college football. It makes my wife very angry how much I watch on a weekly basis when it comes to the actual football season, but I am excited to experience just what the Big 12 has to offer and travel around and see all that. The other thing with the 3 new schools, BYU actually has a pretty recent history. They've played Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF all during their independent era. So they have some familiarity with those new schools. BYU fans, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints love Disney World, so going to UCF and Orlando will obviously be a draw. So that's the fun part. But I'm excited to be part of the Big 12 just to see, because I've seen Lubbock, I've seen Tech, I've seen them play. I just want to go see it in person. That's the thing.
Yeah, we'll wait for like 2 more years when our new football end zone is finished to come see that. But you're welcome from basketball as soon as you want to, because we'll pack 15,000 in to welcome you very loudly. But no, we're pumped you're happy for all of them. Are there any teams you specifically could see rivalries grow from all this?
I think TCU could be one because they have some shared history from their Mountain West and WAC days.
Yeah.
It's been a hot minute since they've played. That one could exist a little bit. I think the Baylor thing, after Baylor punked them last year, and we'll see what happens in the rematch this year in Provo, that could butt into something because both of them are private religious institutions. So that'd be an interesting one. I actually think the UCF BYU thing could be a fun one because BYU fans will travel in droves to Orlando. I know that they're on the opposite ends of the conference, but I think that one could exist as a fun little deal. And the Cougs versus the Cougs with Houston, that's just kind of a fun.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
So I guess those ones would be some fun ones. I actually think that I am intrigued, though. I could see we could see Texas Tech and BYU. Say they have some grudge match game. That's what rivalries come out of. So there are going to be rivalries that pop up between BYU and X university in the Big 12, and it's just going to naturally happen. But those, I guess, are the ones I'm looking to maybe see happen already.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're the 2 furthest schools west, so there's that possibility there. And really, as Tech fans, we always feel like our back's against the wall against every fan base. So, honestly, every school in the Big 12 is a rival to me. So as soon as y'all come in, the friendly rivalry begins.
Well, and that's the thing about just being in a conference is you're constantly scoreboard watching and kind of monitoring who's going up and who's going down, who beat who, et cetera. That's one thing BYU has not had for over a decade. And I think there's a lot of BYU fans who are excited to actually be part of a conference, be part of these races towards conference championships. That's the fun part of it is you get some familiarity with your fellow schools in your conference. That's something that BYU's missed out on for the last 11 seasons.
Yeah, so something that just kind of popped in my head. How have you been watching the remaining 8 Big 12 schools and the new schools coming in this last season with Cincinnati doing well and this coming season? How are you watching that? Are you kind of getting excited about seeing these other schools' success? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think success is you want to see success. You want to have these programs do well because it bolsters the entire conference. Like Cincinnati making the college football playoff last year, that's phenomenal. UCF, I think Gus Malzahn is a decent coach. We'll see how they continue to build down there in Orlando. With Houston coming in, Dana Holgerson is just a wild card of wild cards.
And wild.
So and he's wild, just period. Yes, you're right. So that's gonna be the fun part. I just the overall success of the conference is good for everybody. So if you can have Kansas get off the deck and knock people off here and there as they continue to build things up under Lance Leipold, that's great. I think a program like Tech, for example, with Joey Mcguire, I actually think the staff that Joey has brought in is absolutely phenomenal. They may not have it going this very first year, but he seems like a guy who understands about program building, and he's trying to do it the right way. So I think Tech is going to be on an upward trajectory pretty quick here. That's just my personal observation. And I think just if you have competitive programs that are going after one another, and you have 1 or 2 every so often that essentially transcend it all, go 11-1, go 12-0, that type of stuff, you need that. But if you want the overall talent base and the competitive level, you want it to be very high.
Yeah, we agree. And we're big fans of Joey Mcguire. We think that he's got things hopefully looking upward for us. It's been a while here in the pit of despair of college football. We would like to be back in some sort of relevancy. But so we are Tailgate Talks. We do like, the tailgating experience. And so this is one, a school that we're really curious about. What is the tailgate scene like for a BYU, home football game? Are there any, good food that you have to try, any unique traditions, stuff like that? What's a typical tailgate for a game day like?
Okay, so BYU's history with tailgating is not. It hasn't been great. Let's be frank. The LDS religion asks people to not drink alcohol, and obviously that lends itself to a lack of tailgating culture. But When I was in school at BYU going back over a decade ago, I was part of a crew. We call ourselves the BYU Tailgate Crew, and we started a little bit of a movement. Our goal was to build a tailgating culture for BYU.
Right.
They actually they have a tailgate lot, a specific tailgate lot for fans of both fan bases. If they want to come in and tailgate, you can do that. So you can do that. The fun part is BYU fans, they are loyal to their team, but they're also very giving. Opposing fans, when you come here to Provo, BYU fans are going to give you a hot dog, give you a burger. They'll say, hey, thanks for coming. Hope your team loses, but have a great time regardless. Thanks for coming to Provo. Now, in terms of things you need to try when you come to Provo, I know this might sound blasphemous, but BYU has a restaurant just up the road from it called Bam Bam's Barbecue. Bam Bam himself, that's his nickname. His name's Cameron Treyu. I know. Bam Bam, he's a stud. He has won multiple awards in barbecue competitions. He actually trained in Texas. He does the best brisket outside of Texas that I have had, and I've had plenty of it in Texas. The dude knows what he's doing. It's a 5-minute drive from BYU to try that. So if you're a Tech fan, you need to go try Bam Bam's. Now, at the actual games for BYU, you need to try what they call a Cougar Tail. Now, let me explain what a Cougar Tail is. It's a 2.5 foot long maple donut. Yes, 2.5 feet.
That's awesome.
It is gigantic. If you like maple bars, it is the holy grail of maple bars. It is absolutely phenomenal. They actually do a chocolate version as well, if that's what you prefer. I would encourage you to maybe get 2 or 3 of your friends to finish it, because finishing one of them, you may end up with diabetes at the end of it. But hey, exactly. So the tailgating culture is actually growing, and it's actually fairly robust at this point, a decade in at this point. There's a lot of BYU fans that are dedicated to the tailgating life. They've gone on the road and tailgated. I actually had a conversation with one of the guys who is one of the more dedicated tailgaters. His name is Big Uncle Pooh on Twitter, by the way. It's legitimately his Twitter handle.
Great name.
His name is Adrian. Follow him. I'm telling you, Tech fans, follow Big Uncle Pooh. He is like the grand poobah of tailgating at BYU. He will hook you up. We had a conversation. He actually wants to have an off-season tailgate. He just wants to get together, pull out the grill, and have some fun times ahead of the season. So we're working on that. So the tailgating culture is not maybe what it is at other Big 12 institutions, but they do have a dedicated tailgate lot. They have a lot of BYU fans who have bought into it, and it is continuing to grow at a pretty exponential rate.
Yeah, I think, Dustin, that was your point. Before we had all our guests on and learned about you guys, we kind of went through and broke down what we thought about each school and stuff like that. And Dustin had BYU at the top of his tailgate spot because he just thought it'd be a unique experience compared to kind of what other schools are, which might be a typical tailgate.
Well, here's the thing. BYU has been the most stone-cold sober school for 14 or 15 years straight. The student body, by and large, does not imbibe. And the funny thing about this, I've had multiple opposing fan bases come here. I've talked to fans who say that, okay, if these people are this crazy sober, I don't even want to experience what they might be liquored up. So they are loyal. They love their Cougars. They're loud. They're rowdy. But they all do it by and large. Trust me. I've got 2 really good friends I can think of off the top of my head who like to imbibe. They're diehard Cougar fans. They drink. There are some out there. I know that sounds like a thing that doesn't exist, but they are out there. But the vast majority of BYU fans, they don't partake, but they still love their team, and they are going to have a good time regardless.
So the vast majority of our fan base does.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. I know, and I'm aware of that, and that's the thing. BYU fans, they're used to it. The biggest thing, BYU's beverage of choice, just in my experience, it's Diet Coke. That's the substitute for alcohol at BYU.
But it sounds like, Tech fans, we can have a good time with or without the alcohol. So it seems like we could mesh pretty well with you guys up there and still have a hell of a time.
Yeah, and it'll be fun. BYU fans, they love nothing more than welcoming in opposing fan bases. The crazy thing that most people say when they get here is how close the mountains literally are. From my house where I am sitting right now, guys, I can be up on a mountain in 10 minutes. That is how close I am to the mountains here. And you come out here to Provo, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, you feel like the mountain's right on top of you because it's a 5-minute drive from the stadium. It's right there for you. Yeah,
it's going to be a shock when y'all come to Lubbock for the first time and there's not a hill in sight.
I've been to Austin. I've been to Houston. I've been to Dallas. I've driven through Amarillo. So I've never made it to Lubbock yet. But yeah, Texas is quite flat.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I got Big Uncle Pooh followed on Twitter for your recommendation there. I'm going to kind of hand it over to you if you have any questions for us about Texas Tech, whether it be in general, football, basketball, tailgating, I don't know, Big 12 stuff, anything, whatever you got, Jake.
Okay, so I'm familiar with Utah State, obviously, and Matt Wells was the head coach of Utah State before going to Texas Tech. And let me say this up front. I thought he was going to do better at Tech than he did. It just didn't work. He didn't mesh well, it felt like, down there, etc. So can you help me understand what you feel like where things pivoted for Matt Wells in Lubbock?
Yeah, there's a couple different avenues. I mean, I think one right off the gate when he was hired, there were some big money donors that wanted it to go a different direction.
Okay.
And partly where that came from is Matt Wells was not a Texas guy and didn't really have ties to Texas, whether that be coaching or recruiting wise. Whereas this time around, we went the total opposite and got Joey Mcguire, who is all and everything Texas and is hired that way and recruited that way.
Well, he's a high school.
That was always
Texas, right?
Yeah.
Originally?
Yeah.
Won state championships and everything.
And so that's kind of where it started to fray from the beginning,
okay.
You know. And he wasn't even a flashy name or hire either to get any fan base kind of going. Whereas Cliff, when we hired him, that was a flashy, obviously great looking dude, former quarterback, and we went total opposite. It was kind of just never going to happen. And then like roster wise, he wasn't given much from left by Cliff. So he tried to substitute that with a bunch of JUCO fill-ins, which he was really good at trying to fill in the holes of the roster, I think. And I think he left the roster better than what it was, but he had such a hard time trying to fill that roster from the beginning. It was trying to run on a slippery slope for him roster-wise. Okay.
Yeah, and he never really recruited high school very well, so you weren't getting young guys, good classes, and being able to build them up. And then he had some shitty injury luck. Like our quarterbacks were hurt every single year. Last year we were playing on our third string quarterback, and so I don't think he had, he didn't have the best of luck with injuries either. But for whatever reason, it just didn't work out.
Okay, so on the football side of things, I got another question for you. How quickly do you think Joey Mcguire can get Tech to being bowl eligible?
Man, I think as soon as this year we can get there. Now, I think like 6-6 would be exciting for us as a fan base. It's not necessarily about automatically being 8-4 or something like that. It's just about being competitive in games, showing up week to week, and proving that you belong on the same field with some of these teams that have, blown you out in recent years. So I think like putting together a team that competes week in, week out is exciting to us. And then, I think like Dustin kind of pointed out too, Wells left us some good players. Like we have some good talent on this team. We have a really good quarterback room that he's the reason that they're there. And so now you kind of add in, Zach Kitley, who, transformed Western Kentucky in 1 year. You're hoping that your offense takes a step forward, and then you're hoping that your defense, which brings back a really deep secondary, and then you've plugged in some pieces on the defensive line, offensive line. You're hoping all of that takes and that you're able to, get yourself 6 wins. 7 would be great, and then get yourself the bowl eligibility. But I think by year 2, if this year goes how we're expecting, I think by year 2 that we're expecting ourselves to be a winning football team year in, year out.
Yeah, and that's more where I was going to go because, like, next year our schedule is really tough. I mean, we scheduled NC State a handful of years ago, and now it's like, wait, they're what is this?
Dave Doran got a good team now.
Yep.
We're going to have a really hard time just kind of, but I think he's such a fire guy. He's not going to take no for an answer and like excuses, and give it another year. I think look at next year, like 23, and start letting these recruiting classes start to build up that he's starting to build. And it's gonna take off and be solidified for a little while, I think.
Okay, so I've got 2 more questions for you. One athletics related, the other one's kind of off the field stuff. Basketball wise, obviously they've built this program into what it is. You lost your coach to Texas. Is it gonna fall off at some point? Do you feel like, or are they built for the long haul? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we're built for the long haul. In this, we've got, donors who are motivated to keep this basketball program
good
up there. We've got a coach in Mark Adams who loves Lubbock, who's from Brownfield, which is about 30 minutes outside of it. You know, I actually went to high school with his daughter, so he loves Lubbock. He wants to be here. He's a defensive guru. And, you know, we're recruiting well still. You know, we lost some players last year, some key players for us in McCullough and TJ Shannon, but we replaced it with top transfers. We're starting to get younger players who are committing to us, a couple top 100 recruits. And so I think this is something that's here to stay. You're going to get players who want to come in, work on their defense, but also I think this year we focused on let's get some more offense in here and let's get guys who can create on offense. And so the success of the former coach, who we do not really try to name on here, definitely set us up. But I think Mark Adams has came in, and the energy of this program, and really a lot of it's built off the animosity for the previous coach, really did propel us and helped us, I think, have a really great year last year, but prove that we can still be successful without him. And that's translated into a lot of really good recruits, a lot of really good transfers. And I think you're just going to continue to see us be really competitive and at the top of, you know, like we've said, the toughest conference in basketball.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the fan base is behind that. Like I mentioned, we pack in 14, 15,000 in our arena very loudly. But it's almost like our coach, Mark Adams, has this like mythical cloud above him that his defense is like another level. And it's like players just want to come learn how to do that. And it's like we get great offensive transfers that want to learn this defense because that'll make them a better NBA player. And yeah, now our recruiting is doing the same thing. So it's like this just aura cloud of like the Mark Adams defense, and it's just growing and growing. And he's such a smart guy and he likes his assistant coaches too. And they're a very smart group. And it's pretty awesome to see how well he flipped that around in 1 year.
Can I add one tidbit on the basketball front for you guys? I forgot about this. Fardaz Amak, big man coming in from Utah Valley University.
Pumped about him.
Tech fans are going to love him.
I can't wait.
Ball. Yeah. He is a fantastic player, can shoot the three at a decent clip. He's a rebounding freak. He's just a machine on the interior. Let me just say, Tech fans, you're going to love the kid. He's got a phenomenal backstory. He loves the dirty work. He loves to work. So let me just add that for you guys on the basketball front. Hey. Tech fans are going to love him.
Yeah, he was our big get, you know, and the transfer portal, the big maple, what they call him. And so
big maple.
Yeah, we're all in.
They actually did I don't know if I have it in my office here, but so when they were kind of like making a push for him for postseason awards from UVU, they actually sent us glass bottles of maple syrup in a maple leaf, and it has a picture of him in big maple.
That's
on
awesome.
It. So it's one of those cool things out there. All right, last thing for me on the Tech front, I got for you guys. It's a kind of a two-parter, similar to what you asked me about BYU and Provo and whatnot. So I want to know the best place to eat in Lubbock, and what is like the can't miss thing at a Texas Tech football game?
Dustin, you want to take this one first?
Yeah. You're going to ask questions if you come to a Tech football game and see tortillas being thrown on the field at the initial kickoff, as we have a black horse and rider lead the team out onto the field. It's one of the most glorious entrances in all of college football. We always gripe that it doesn't get enough shine. So it really is pretty amazing. The tortillas, honestly, we don't even know where it started from, but it goes in waves. Like every 2 years, it'll kind of pop up, and then in a couple years, there's only a few, and it comes back. I would expect with Joey Mcguire, there's going to be a lot more. Students just sneak them in their clothes as they come in, and then they just start flying. And honestly, you're like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, the tortillas and an amazing horse entrance.
Yep.
That works. So Dustin, for you, where's the best place? Like if a BYU fan goes to Lubbock, where should they eat?
I'm going to direct them near campus. I'm not going to send you to the bar scene because I know that, it's not going to hit very well for y'all's demographic. I'm sending you right down the road to this little burger place called Spankys.
Yes.
Okay.
Amazing burgers and sandwiches, but their fried cheese is about 6 inches by an inch and a half. They're massive, and they are delicious. They're the best. but they come in about a pack of 6. So you're going to need at least 2 or 3 people, maybe more, maybe 6, one for everybody.
Eat it by yourself.
Don't try to do this on your own. That you'll probably have a bad time.
Yeah.
But if you have a whole handful, a little family, go for it. Spankys is a great burger joint. Get the fried cheese. You'll have a great time there.
Awesome.
Yeah, Dustin kind of stole my restaurant there. I was going to mention Spankys, and the best part about it, it's like right by the stadium, so you can go, get your burger, get your fried cheese, don't overdo it, and then walk over, and you'll get to see, the practice facility, and at that time the renovations and all that stuff going on, and then walk right into the game from there. Some other newer place in Lubbock that's pretty good is called Dirks. Dirks does chicken fingers and steak fingers that are really, really good. But the cool part about it is there's this old artist, Dirk West, who the restaurant's named after, and he used to do a bunch of cartoon drawings of our mascot, Raider Red, and also Big 12 mascots and stuff. And they have all of his drawings on the wall. And so it's a pretty cool look back into some Big 12 history, some Texas Tech history through his art, but also the food's pretty good there. So I would recommend that. It's also, not too far from the stadium either. So, and there's some really nice hotel, a new nice hotel over there. So you can stay at that Cotton Court, go over to Dirks, go over to the game, have a good time. And then I guess my part would be outside the stadium, as we talked about tailgating. You don't have to drink to have a good time at a tailgate. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of tailgates. There's a lot of good stuff, fun stuff going on throughout there. And kind of like y'all's fan base, it sounds like we really want to impress on people that Lubbock is an awesome place to be and have a great time. So people are super friendly, and they're going to, like you said, offer you hot dog, offer you, cold water if you need it, or whatever food that they're cooking. And there's always fun. Lots of food, lots of barbecue, lots of really cool places to walk by, lots of friendly fans. And so that's kind of one of the things I'll point out is just kind of walk around outside the stadium and see those tailgates and just kind of see what all the people are cooking up and having a good time. They'll probably stop you, talk to you, want to hear your story, and you're going to end up having a great time in Lubbock. So that's just that's what I'll throw out there.
Wait, I think BYU fans are excited to experience Lubbock. Like West Texas, we know you guys are a little bit of an outpost out there in the western part of that state,
right.
But that's the fun part about this. This is a whole new world for BYU, and I think BYU fans are really excited about it.
Yeah, I think it goes for the same for us. We're used to the fan bases that are staying here, so I know the first time BYU comes to Lubbock, it's going to be an exciting time for me as somebody who's born in Lubbock, who's never seen BYU come into town. It's going to be exciting. And so I think the fan base will be very energetic for that game, and we'll treat, y'all's fans pretty well. So looking forward to all that. Thank you for coming on and teaching us everything we need to know about BYU. And real quick, we'll just give you a chance here to shout out your podcast, shout out where to follow you. Sounds like you're a busy man covering all sorts of things. So let the people know that they got a BYU fan that they can follow here, where to follow you at.
Yes, you can just search out Locked On Cougars wherever you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube, similar to what you guys do. We do a video version of it, just Locked On Cougars on whatever podcast provider you happen to use. We do have a Facebook, Instagram, and a Twitter feed for the show. It's all Locked On Cougars, really simple to find there. And then my personal Twitter feed, I weigh in on all things sports, college football, the Utah Jazz, Utes, Cougars, all of that. You can follow me. It's my full name, Jacob C. as in cat Hatch. So Jacob C. Hatch. Love to hear from you guys, and like I said, I am super pumped for the Big 12 and BYU.
We are as well. Well, thanks, Jake, for taking the time out of your Tuesday night to hop on to the tailgate and teach us everything we need to know about BYU joining the Big 12 Conference in 2023. We're looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Let me know.